That is enough.
I suggest you leave this party immediately before I have security remove you.
Victoria Chen smoothed down the fabric of her burgundy silk dress as she entered the Grand Meridian Hotel ballroom. The massive crystal chandeliers overhead created patterns of light that danced across the marble floor like scattered diamonds. Elegant music floated through the air, while well-dressed guests mingled beneath towering floral arrangements. This annual charity gala benefited the Metropolitan Arts Foundation, and Victoria had been looking forward to it for weeks. Nathan Pierce walked beside her with the confident stride of someone who believed he owned every room he entered. As a successful real estate broker, he had built his reputation on charm and aggressive sales tactics. Victoria had been with him for nearly 4 years, and during that time, she had learned to navigate his moods and manage his expectations. She told herself it was love, but lately, she wondered if it was simply habit. The ballroom buzzed with conversation as guests found their assigned tables. Victoria recognized several faces from previous events. There were business owners, local politicians, artists, philanthropists, all gathered for an evening of networking disguised as charity. She spotted their table near the center of the room and followed Nathan through the crowd as they walked. Victoria noticed a man standing near the bar. He was tall, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit. There was something magnetic about his presence. He did not demand attention, yet people naturally gravitated toward him. When his eyes briefly met hers, Victoria felt an unexpected spark of recognition. Though she was certain they had never met, Nathan immediately launched into conversation with the other guests at their table, dominating the discussion with stories about his latest property deals. Victoria sat quietly, occasionally nodding and smiling at appropriate moments. She had perfected this role over the years. The supportive girlfriend who did not interrupt, who made Nathan look good, simply by being pleasant and attractive beside him. Dinner service began with an elegant first course. Victoria barely tasted the food as Nathan continued talking about himself. He mentioned a penthouse he had just sold, the commission he had earned, and the luxury vacation he was planning. He did not ask Victoria about her recent project. Even though she had just completed a major renovation for a historic building downtown, Margaret Wells, a kind woman from the Arts Council, turned to Victoria with genuine interest. She asked about her work as an interior designer. Victoria began to share details about her latest project, explaining how she had restored original architectural features while incorporating modern functionality. For a brief moment, she felt the joy of discussing something she truly cared about. Nathan interrupted with a laugh that cut through her words. He placed his hand over hers in a gesture that might have seemed affectionate to others, but felt possessive to Victoria. He told the table that Victoria liked to make her little design projects sound more important than they really were. He said she had a tendency to exaggerate, that she was sweet, but not exactly business-minded. His tone was playful, but his words stung like small cuts. Victoria felt her face flush with embarrassment. She withdrew her hand from beneath his and focused on her wine glass. Margaret gave her a sympathetic look but said nothing. The conversation moved on, and Victoria retreated further into silence. The evening progressed through multiple courses. Victoria watched the mystery man from the bar as he moved through the room with quiet confidence. She learned from overheard conversations that he was Julian Blackstone, a billionaire philanthropist known for his technology, innovations, and extensive charitable work. He had apparently donated a substantial sum to the Arts Foundation, which explained why everyone seemed so eager to speak with him as dessert was being served. The event organizers began their program of speeches. Several board members thanked donors and shared updates about foundation projects. Then Nathan stood up unexpectedly. Slightly unsteady on his feet from the wine he had consumed throughout the evening, he took the microphone that was being passed around for toasts and began speaking with exaggerated enthusiasm. He talked about success and relationships, about how important it was to have the right partner who did not overshadow your accomplishments. Victoria felt dread pooling in her stomach as she realized where this was heading. Nathan gestured toward her with a wide smile. He told the room that Victoria was a perfect example of a supportive partner. She knew her place, he said. She did not try to compete with him or make herself the center of attention. She was content to stay in the background, handling her modest design work while he closed major deals. He said she was like a comfortable piece of furniture, reliable and undemanding. Always there when needed, but never demanding the spotlight. Laughter rippled through portions of the crowd, though many faces showed discomfort. Victoria felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath her. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward her, witnessing her humiliation. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. Then something inside Victoria shifted. A voice that had been growing louder over the past few months finally broke through. She was done being diminished. She was done making herself smaller to protect Nathan's fragile ego. She stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. The room fell silent as Victoria placed her napkin carefully on the table. She looked directly at Nathan with clear eyes and a steady voice. She thanked him for finally being honest about how he saw her. She told him he was right that she knew her place. Her place was anywhere except beside someone who treated her with such disrespect. She said she had wasted for years supporting his career while he took credit for ideas they had developed together, attending his events without complaint, and accepting his casual cruelty disguised as jokes. Nathan's face turned pale, then red. He tried to laugh it off, saying she was being too sensitive, that everyone knew he was just joking. Victoria replied that the only joke was that she had stayed this long believing his behavior would change. She picked up her clutch and walked toward the exit with her head held high. The click of her heels against the marble floor echoed through the stunned silence. She did not look back, did not hesitate, did not apologize. For the first time in years, Victoria felt truly free. Victoria pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped into the cool night air. The hotel's fountain courtyard was illuminated by soft landscape lighting, creating a peaceful contrast to the chaos she had just left behind. She walked to the edge of the fountain and gripped the stone ledge, trying to steady her breathing. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her hands still trembled from the adrenaline coursing through her body. She had done it. She had actually walked away. Part of her felt triumphant, but another part felt terrified of what came next. 4 years of her life had just ended in a single moment of clarity. She thought about her apartment, which was technically Nathan's apartment. She thought about the mutual friends who would inevitably take sides. She thought about starting over at 32 years old. A deep voice spoke from behind her, gentle but clear. He said that what she had done in there took remarkable courage. Victoria turned to find Julian Blackstone standing a respectful distance away. Up close, he was even more striking than she had noticed from across the room. He had strong features softened by genuine kindness in his eyes. And there was an air of calm confidence about him that felt reassuring rather than intimidating. Victoria apologized for the scene, saying she had not meant to disrupt the entire event. Julian stepped closer, his expression serious. He told her she had nothing to apologize for. Nathan was the one who should be ashamed, not her. He paused before introducing himself properly as Julian Blackstone. Mentioning that he and Nathan had been college roommates many years ago, Victoria introduced herself, surprised by this connection. She asked if they were still close friends. Julian shook his head with a hint of regret in his voice. He explained that they had drifted apart over the years, largely because he could not tolerate the way Nathan treated people. He said he had watched Nathan diminish others to elevate himself since their university days, and he had always hoped Nathan would mature beyond that behavior. Tonight had proven that hope was misplaced. They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment, both looking at the fountain. Julian mentioned that he ran Blackstone Technologies, a company focused on developing sustainable urban infrastructure solutions. He said he made it his business to notice talented people, and he had actually seen some of Victoria's design work featured in architectural publications. He specifically mentioned a historic hotel renovation she had completed last year, praising how she had honored the building's heritage while creating functional modern spaces. Victoria looked at him with surprise. She told him that Nathan had always dismissed that project as a waste of time because it had not generated enough profit. Julian responded that some people measure worth only in dollar signs and miss everything that actually matters. He said her work demonstrated exceptional skill in balancing aesthetics with functionality, historical preservation with contemporary needs. That kind of vision was rare and valuable. For the first time all evening, Victoria felt truly seen. Not as Nathan's girlfriend, not as someone meant to stay in the background, but as a professional with genuine talent. She thanked Julian quietly, her voice thick with emotion. She admitted that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone recognize her work. Julian reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. He told her he was serious about what he said. His company was expanding into commercial interior design for their building projects, and they needed someone with her specific expertise. He said she deserved to work somewhere that valued her contributions. If she was interested in exploring new opportunities, or even if she just needed someone to talk to who was not a complete disaster like Nathan, she should call him. Victoria took the card, feeling the weight of possibility it represented. She studied Julian's face, looking for signs of insincerity or ulterior motives, but found only genuine openness. She asked why he would do this for someone he just met. Julian considered the question carefully before answering. He told her that 5 years ago, he had been in a similar situation. Not romantic, but professional. He had been working at a prestigious firm where his boss constantly took credit for his innovations and made him feel like his ideas were too radical, too risky. He had almost given up on starting his own company because someone he trusted convinced him he was being unrealistic. His younger sister finally asked him a simple question that changed everything. She asked what he would do if he knew he could not fail. Victoria felt tears forming as she listened. Julian continued, saying that question made him realize the only real failure would be not trying. He built Blackstone Technologies from nothing, and it became successful precisely because he stopped letting other people define his worth. He looked directly at Victoria and told her he was asking her the same question. If she knew she could not fail, what would she do? Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper as she answered. She said she would stop making herself smaller to fit into someone else's expectations. She would stop accepting crumbs when she deserved the whole meal. She would take a chance on herself and her abilities. Julian smiled warmly and told her to do exactly that. Life was too short to spend it dimmed by people who were threatened by her light. Victoria laughed despite her tears, saying that was surprisingly philosophical for a tech billionaire. Julian grinned and admitted he read a lot of poetry in his spare time. But she had to promise not to tell anyone because it would ruin his ruthless businessman reputation, Victoria promised. Feeling lighter than she had in months, Julian glanced back toward the ballroom and said he needed to go back inside to have a very direct conversation with Nathan about basic human decency and respect. He told Victoria she should go home, take off the uncomfortable shoes she was undoubtedly wearing, and recognize that she had just done something incredibly brave. Victoria agreed that the shoes were indeed torture devices. Julian laughed and told her to go be free of this disaster of an evening. As he turned to leave, he paused and mentioned there was a networking event the following week at the Innovation Gallery downtown. It brought together architects, designers, and developers who were doing creative work in sustainable urban development. He asked if she would like to attend as his guest. Victoria felt nervousness, mixed with excitement. She asked if he was sure, given that she had just created a scene at a charity gala. Julian responded that she had not created a scene. She had stood up for herself when someone treated her poorly. Anyone who saw it differently had their own issues to address. He said the event would be full of people who would appreciate her work and perspective. She deserved to be in rooms where her presence was valued, not tolerated. Victoria agreed to attend, surprising herself with how quickly she answered. Julian's face brightened with genuine pleasure. He said he looked forward to it and told her to call him during the week so they could coordinate details. Then he walked back toward the ballroom with purposeful strides. Victoria stood alone in the courtyard, clutching Julian's business card. She looked up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution and took a deep breath. For 4 years, she had molded herself into what Nathan wanted. She had accepted his dismissals, his casual cruelty, his constant need to prove he was superior. She had convinced herself that this was what compromise looked like in a relationship, but standing there in the cool night air, free from Nathan's presence and expectations, Victoria realized she had not been compromising. She had been disappearing. Piece by piece, she had given away parts of herself until she barely recognized who she had become. That ended tonight. Victoria walked toward her car with steady steps, her head high, despite the emotional exhaustion settling over her. She did not know exactly what came next, but she knew it would be on her own terms. She had her talent, her experience, and now an unexpected connection with someone who actually saw her value as she drove home through the quiet city streets. Victoria felt something she had not experienced in years. She felt hope. Real, genuine hope for a future where she was not an accessory to someone else's ambitions, but the architect of her own success. The road ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Victoria was excited to travel it. Victoria spent the next 3 days in a whirlwind of change. She packed her belongings from Nathan's apartment while he was at work, leaving behind anything he had purchased for her. She wanted nothing that came with strings attached or reminders of who she had tried to be for him. Her best friend Rachel helped her move into a small furnished apartment across town. It was temporary, modest, absolutely perfect, because it was entirely hers. Nathan had called 17 times and sent countless messages that ranged from angry to apologetic to manipulative. Victoria blocked his number after reading the last message where he accused her of ruining his reputation over a harmless joke. She felt no guilt, it's only relief that she could finally see his behavior clearly without the fog of misplaced loyalty. On Thursday afternoon, Victoria sat in her new apartment, staring at Julian's business card. She had picked it up and put it down at least 20 times since the gala. Part of her worried that his offer had been a polite gesture made in the heat of the moment, something he probably regretted now. Another part of her, the part that was slowly remembering how to trust herself, knew she needed to make the call. She dialed the number before she could talk herself out of it. Julian answered on the second ring, his voice warm and welcoming. He sounded genuinely pleased to hear from her. Victoria felt her nervousness ease as they talked. He asked how she was doing, and she was honest. She told him about moving out, about the relief mixed with uncertainty, about feeling both terrified and liberated. Julian listened without interrupting or offering empty platitudes. When she finished, he told her that what she was feeling was completely normal. Change was always uncomfortable, even when it was necessary and right. He said the fact that she had taken action despite the fear showed real strength. Then he reminded her about the networking event at the Innovation Gallery on Saturday evening. He said he would love to introduce her to some people who might appreciate her work. Victoria agreed to attend. And they made plans for Julian to pick her up at 7. After hanging up, she sat for a long moment, processing the conversation. There had been no pressure, no expectations beyond simple companionship. Julian treated her like an equal, someone whose thoughts and feelings mattered. The contrast to Nathan was striking. Saturday arrived with unexpected sunshine breaking through the usual cloud cover. Victoria spent the afternoon preparing, choosing a sophisticated emerald dress that made her feel confident without trying too hard. She styled her hair in loose waves and kept her makeup natural. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone she had not seen in years. Someone who looked ready to step into her own life instead of hiding in the shadows of someone else's. Julian arrived exactly on time, driving a sleek but understated car. He complimented her appearance with sincerity rather than flattery, saying the color suited her perfectly. During the drive to the gallery, they talked easily about architecture, design, philosophy, and their favorite buildings in the city. Victoria found herself laughing genuinely, something that had become rare over the past few years. The Innovation Gallery was a converted warehouse, with soaring ceilings and exposed brick walls. Large windows let in the golden evening light. The space was filled with creative professionals networking over wine and conversation. Julian introduced Victoria to architects, urban planners, and fellow designers. He presented her as a talented interior designer, mentioning specific projects she had worked on. People listened with genuine interest, asking questions about her approach and philosophy. Victoria met Olivia Grant, a renowned architect who was leading a sustainable housing initiative. Olivia had seen Victoria's work in design publications and expressed interest in collaborating on an upcoming project. She gave Victoria her contact information and suggested they meet for coffee the following week to discuss possibilities. Victoria felt a thrill of professional excitement she had almost forgotten was possible as the evening progressed. Julian stayed close, but never hovered. He gave her space to make connections while remaining available if she needed support. Victoria noticed how people respected him, not because he demanded it, but because he treated everyone with the same courtesy, regardless of their status or position. He asked thoughtful questions, listened attentively, and genuinely seemed interested in what others had to say. During a quiet moment, they stepped out onto the gallery's rooftop terrace. The city spread out before them, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. Julian leaned against the railing and asked Victoria what she thought of the event. She told him it had been wonderful, that she felt energized in a way she had not experienced in years. She thanked him for inviting her and for believing she had something valuable to contribute. Julian turned to face her directly. He said he had not done anything except recognize what was already there. Her talent, her vision, her strength had always existed. Nathan had just tried to convince her otherwise, because her light made him feel inadequate. But the truth was that she had always been remarkable. She just needed to be in an environment where that was celebrated, instead of suppressed. Victoria felt tears threatening, but held them back. She told Julian she did not understand why he was being so kind to her. They barely knew each other. He could have walked past her in the courtyard that night and avoided the whole messy situation. Why had he chosen to get involved? Julian was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. He said that 3 years ago, his younger sister had been in an abusive relationship. Not physically, but emotionally. Her partner had systematically destroyed her confidence, made her believe she was worthless without him, isolated her from friends and family. Julian had not recognized the signs until it was almost too late. When he finally understood what was happening, he helped her leave. But the guilt of not seeing it sooner still haunted him. He looked at Victoria with honest eyes and said when he saw Nathan humiliating her in front of all those people, he saw his sister. He saw someone remarkable being diminished by someone insecure. He could not walk away from that. Not again. Helping her was not charity or pity. It was doing what he wished he had done sooner for someone he loved. Victoria reached out and touched his arm gently. She told him he was a good brother and a good person. She said his sister was lucky to have him, and she felt grateful that he had been there that night. Julian covered her hand with his and smiled. He said he felt grateful too, though perhaps for different reasons than she expected. There was a charged moment between them, something unspoken but tangible. Victoria felt her heart rate quicken. Julian seemed to lean slightly closer, then stopped himself. He stepped back and suggested they rejoin the event. Though his eyes held a warmth that suggested their connection was becoming something more than professional courtesy, the following weeks unfolded with a rhythm Victoria had not anticipated. She met with Olivia Grant and was offered a contract position on the Sustainable Housing Project. The work was challenging and meaningful, exactly the kind of design work she had always dreamed of doing. She began building a portfolio of independent projects, slowly establishing herself outside of the shadow Nathan had cast over her career. Julian remained a constant presence, but never intrusive. They met for coffee to discuss potential collaborations between her design work and his company's building projects. Those meetings gradually extended into dinners where they talked about everything except work. They discovered shared interests in art, hiking, and classic literature. Julian introduced her to his sister Emma, who welcomed Victoria with warmth and understanding, recognizing a kindred spirit who had also escaped a diminishing relationship. One evening, 2 months after the gala, Julian and Victoria sat in a small Italian restaurant tucked away in the arts district. The candlelight flickered between them as they finished sharing a bottle of wine. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. He told her he needed to be honest about something. These past weeks had been the best he had experienced in years. Getting to know her, watching her rediscover her confidence and passion, had made him realize he was developing feelings that went beyond friendship or professional respect. Victoria's breath caught. Julian continued, saying he did not want to pressure her or complicate her life when she was rebuilding. But he also did not want to pretend that being around her did not make him happier than he could remember being. He wanted to know if there was any possibility she might feel the same way. Victoria squeezed his hand. She told him that she had been afraid to acknowledge her own feelings because everything had happened so fast. She had gone from a 4-year relationship to being single to meeting someone who made her feel things she had never felt with Nathan. But the truth was that Julian had shown her what it meant to be truly valued. He had never once made her feel small or insignificant. He challenged her to grow, but never demanded she change. Being with him felt like coming home to a place how she had never known existed. Julian's face broke into a smile that transformed his usually composed features. He stood and moved to her side of the table, pulling her gently to her feet. He asked if he could kiss her, and Victoria answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was soft and full of promise, tasting of wine and new beginnings. 3 months later, Victoria stood in the lobby of her first solo exhibition at a downtown gallery. Her collection featured design concepts for accessible, beautiful urban spaces that served communities rather than just generating profit. The walls displayed her sketches, renderings, and photographs of completed projects. The room was filled with people genuinely interested in her work, asking thoughtful questions and offering opportunities for collaboration. Julian stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Not possessive, just present. Emma chatted excitedly with Olivia Grant about potential new projects. Rachel beamed with pride, telling anyone who would listen that she had known all along. Victoria was destined for great things. Victoria looked around the gallery at the life she had built from the ashes of that humiliating night. She thought about the woman who had walked out of the Grand Meridian ballroom, heartbroken and uncertain. That woman had been brave enough to choose herself, to walk away from comfort into the unknown. She had taken a chance on her own worth, and it had led her here. Julian leaned down and whispered that he was proud of her. Victoria turned to him and smiled. She told him she was proud of herself too. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with someone who celebrated her rather than diminished her. She had learned that true love did not ask you to be smaller. It invited you to expand into your fullest self. As the evening continued, Victoria felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had not been easy, but every difficult step had been worth it. She had found her voice, her purpose, and unexpectedly she had found love that nourished rather than depleted. This was not an ending, but a beautiful beginning, and Victoria could not wait to see where the path would lead.